everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville was a guest on Another View 2 weeks ago with his predictions of who would be on the ballot in the 2020 presidential elections. Since that time, a whistleblower has come forward to say President Trump is illegally using his presidential powers to dig up dirt on a potential opponent, in this case, Joe Biden. And now Congress has begun an impeachment inquiry. Many of you asked that Dr. Claville come back to explain impeachment and if he sticks by his original prediction. You asked, we answered. The Claville Report. Another View is next.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we embark on our Impeachment 101 class with political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville, I want to talk to you about two things very quickly. First, this is my absolute favorite thing to tell you all about today, and that is the free little library ribbon cutting that is coming up on October the 7th at 3:30 p.m. at the Park Place Peace Garden. Now, this free little library will be a take a book, return a book, free book exchange. So anyone can bring a book or bring a book to share. They'll have local authors, children's books that will be there, and they're really trying to work with literacy. This is located in the Park Place neighborhood in Norfolk. The little library will be housed right across the street from James Monroe Elementary School at the Peace Garden, Park Place Peace Garden. So come for the ribbon cutting October the 7th at 3:30 p.m. And congratulations to Jordan Crawford and the Norfolk Public School kids who built it, Demia Lindsay Mitchell for designing it, and Park Place Peace Garden for giving it a home. I love seeing the community come together and taking care of issues. So come out and support them. I also want to talk to you today about a program coming to South Hampton Roads called Unmasking Hampton Roads, brought to you by the Hampton Roads Community Foundation and Virginia Humanities. Unmasking HR is a 3-part learning series that examines the historic and contemporary impact of racism in our area. There will be an opportunity to break bread together with people from all races, participate in facilitated small group discussions led by the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities, observe a stage play, Abolitionist Museum by Sherry Bailey and Company, and engage in a panel discussion. Now, Unmasking Hampton Roads will happen twice in our community. The first one is October 10, 17, and 19, and will focus on Norfolk and Virginia Beach. That Unmasking series will be held at Old Donation School on Honey Grove Road in Virginia Beach. The second series will be held at the Tidewater Community College Portsmouth campus, and that's on November 14, 21, and 23. And it will focus on Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Suffolk. The purpose of both unmasking events is to allow you to understand the role racism plays and how our communities are structured, to talk honestly about the effects of racism, and learn tools to recognize and address racial biases. Now, this is the third unmasking series in Virginia. The others were held in Richmond after the blackface scandal and in Charlottesville after the deadly violence brought by white nationalist protesters. Unmasking is the brainchild of journalist and writer Samantha Willis and is a part of the Beneath the Surface Race and the History of Race in South Hampton Roads initiative, which is a partnership between the Virginia Humanities and the Hampton Roads Community Foundation. All of this is a part of the HRCF's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, which is a strategy to accomplish its mission of making life in Hampton Roads better through leadership, philanthropy, and civic engagement. Now, I'm honored to be a part of the advisory board for this initiative, and I encourage you to get involved. Please go to unmaskinghr.org and register to participate. There is no charge, but you must register. Again, that's unmaskinghr.org. So let's all work together to make Hampton Roads the absolute best place that it can be. So 2 weeks ago, Dr. Eric Claville predicted that President Trump will serve another 4 years in office. Many of you sent emails expressing disbelief. One woman wrote that, quote, "I almost ran off the road when I heard his prediction," unquote. Now, you may or may not agree with her sentiment, but with Congress now conducting an impeachment inquiry, many of you asked that Dr. Claville come back to explain exactly what is happening and why it matters. So today we're in class, Impeachment 101. Please welcome our instructor, political and legal analyst, Dr. Eric Claville, director of the Center of African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. Hello, Professor.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Real big classroom this time, right?
Very big.
So, Congress has been talking about impeachment for quite a while.
Yes.
And I'm curious, before I even ask you what was it about this thing, let's listen to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, as she announced the fact that an inquiry would start.
And this week, the president has admitted to asking the president of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. The actions of the Trump presidency revealed dishonorable fact of the president's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
So, Eric, what is it about this particular event, this conversation that the president had with the president of Ukraine,
Right.
that tipped the scale and made Congress finally act?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make one quick correction about my prediction in last 2 weeks ago. I predicted that he would be reelected, not necessarily serve another 4 years.
Oh, okay. There is a difference. You're right.
There is a difference.
You're right.
You can get in the House, but staying in the House is another. It's a totally different thing. But with this 9-page report that was detailed and outlined instances when this particular person knew of information, either firsthand, but also secondhand, a lot of it, which they admitted they did not have direct evidence of a lot of these things. However, from their investigation, they got it from a lot of reliable sources over and over again. More specifically, the conversations to foreign nations in order to improve either his personal status or to help in aiding himself in investigating others that are running against him in his presidential campaign. One thing of note in that report is that he did note, and I say he, but it may have been she, but this person did note that there is a secret server within the White House where various phone calls have been moved in order to protect the president for whatever reasons. Now, I want to also state that this is not an unusual practice where some things are removed from the public venue to protect the president. As a matter of fact, even Nixon, and I'll talk about Nixon as one of the 3 presidents that went through the impeachment process. But of course, he wasn't impeached because he resigned. But there were papers that were released not too long ago, the Alderman papers, where he actually did pretty much the same thing that Trump is being accused of, where he messed in the peace talks in Vietnam to extend the war longer to improve his chances against LBJ.
So is the fact that the president asked the president of Ukraine to investigate, or is it that he withheld aid to the country first and then asked him? Is there a difference?
Well, to me, is 6 on one side, half a dozen on the other.
Well, they were saying because China has just apparently came out a couple of days ago that he also asked China to do the same thing, but they're saying that's different than the Ukrainian situation.
Right,
Why?
because they're saying that he didn't withhold any aid, right? However, we have a trade talk coming up, I think next week with China. So there. Of course, nobody says quid pro quo. I think that's been talked about over different news outlets. But no one ever says quid pro quo. But quid pro quo itself, which is this for that, it's Latin meaning this for that, basically it's implied. if you do me a favor here, I'll do you a favor over there. Wink, wink. And I'll grease your hand, you'll grease mine, and we'll help each other out. The fact that now one of the arguments for the president is that, he did this during the presidential campaign, and he did. He asked to find Clinton's 30,000 plus emails.
Yeah, he said that out loud.
Right. The difference here is that he is in the office of the president. He was a candidate. He was a private citizen. But now he's actually the president making these phone calls over the White House in the Oval Office phone to a foreign nation and also a foreign president. Also, when you look at the impact of this, now, I will talk about why I believe that will the impeachment have an impact or not in just a moment. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about Ukraine is a very intricate and strategic place geographically and historically as it relates to NATO, as it relates to the Soviet Union, and as it relates to possibly what we have, and I've been ringing the alarm on this, conflict that we're going to have in that particular area of the world. Mm-hmm. In the Baltic area, you're talking about Ukraine, you're talking about Crimea, the annexation of Crimea, and Russia having control over that. Now, as a political scientist and someone who's a political junkie into public policy, I understand that. But the question is, does the average person understand that? And the answer is overwhelmingly no. Right now, the average person is concerned about their stock portfolio that's been dropping constantly. They're concerned about the job wages that are stagnated. They're concerned about whether they're going to have a retirement when they leave. When they retire. Mm-hmm. Right. So all these things are very important, but they're happening in various silos that I believe is not being communicated in a very strategic and proper way so that the American people can understand it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of white noise out there. There's a lot of distractions out there, whether it's coming from the White House, whether it's coming from other places, and individuals simply they have a hard time wrapping their minds around it. Mm-hmm. Every morning we wake up, there's just so much going on, whether we hear it from a tweet, whether we hear it on the news, breaking news is taking place because someone else made a comment. How can you really keep track of all of this? But back to that 9-page report, Barbara, how amazing it is what 9 pages can do. And probably cost less than 12 cents compared
to the price of the Mueller
$22 million
wow.
over the course of almost 2 years, where basically Mueller, in essence, exonerated the president, saying that he couldn't do X, Y, Z. He couldn't find anything on him, but in effect, it wasn't his place, as we talked about the decision from the Attorney General. He couldn't, but basically that's left to Congress. And
and then he gave Congress the footprint.
He gave Congress the footprint
to run with it.
Right, and all the evidence, which is what they should have done if they were going to pull the impeachment trigger and make sure that the country is not wound up in, well, why now, why not then, and also so forth. And also look at all the people who have lost their careers, people who are in federal prison right now, trying with their involvement with this president, and he's still out, and he's still our president, right?
So let's go to the basics then for a second.
Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about what is a whistleblower, and kind of what surrounds the rules of being a whistleblower.
So a whistleblower is someone who basically rings the alarm of wrongdoing within an organization or a person. Whistleblower just simply is a name that's kind of stuck, with that particular individual. This has been something that we've always, as a country, we've always wanted to protect, because when you talk about treason upon a nation, or you talk about wrongdoing within an agency, in a company, when you're protecting people's monies, they're protecting their retirement. People remember Enron, and Kenneth Lay, and things that they were doing. It's very important to give these individuals protections, because they're letting the public know, hey, there's something that's afoot, there's something that's wrong, or they're letting the powers to be. Keep in mind, every whistleblower doesn't have to become public. You can actually handle it within your agency, and usually most of them do, right? So it's like my supervisor's doing something, or
so they would go to their HR person or to the president of the company or something like that to let them know.
Right, and they usually have a process internally. And of course, this is a new phenomenon. I have done some employment law for a while and so forth. So I kind of learned about those processes, with different individuals, clients, whether it be cases, consulting, and so forth. So there are protections that are there. Congress signed additional protections for them back during the Obama administration to give individuals more protection because when you come out and you stand on something that you believe is fundamentally wrong, okay, you're going to be standing by yourself. I'm going to tell you that right now. Your friends are going to leave you. Your coworkers, they're going to say, oh, I'm praying for you, but they're not going to be associated with you because those agencies, those individuals you're blowing the whistle on or alerting, they're going to do everything they can to protect themselves.
And President Trump has said that he feels that he has the right to confront his whistleblower, but that's not how it works.
According to law, no, you do not. And a lot of people are equating, and I've heard individuals call in. I listen to C-SPAN every morning, just about, and I listen to the call-in show. Right. And I listen to what people are saying because those are the people who are engaged. Those are the people that vote. Those are the individuals that feel very passionate. When you pick up the phone and call, that's in a tweet from behind a phone or computer or in something anonymous. Anybody can do that. Right. There's a word for people that do that. Right. But when you pick the phone up, and you actually call, this is my name, this is where I'm from, or you write an opinion, an op-ed, and you have to put your name, your address on it, you feel very passionate about what you're doing. And a lot of people are equating this to that are protecting him, that the president has sided with him as someone who is being attacked unfairly, that the Constitution gives a person the right to face their accuser and things of that nature. So, there's a lot of miseducation, misinterpretation of laws and so forth, which also goes to the concept that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, distract, destroy, and just basically dumb down a lot of the information that's out there.
So do you think the whistleblower will ever come forward?
I'm not sure. In this particular case, look, it's D.C. It's going to leak anyway. So, that's going to happen. So it's not an issue whether we won't know who that person is.
Okay. So let's talk about what exactly the word impeachment means. Because I think some people think it means that he's going to automatically be kicked out of office if it were to go through, but that's not what it means.
It's not. The Constitution, Article 2, Section 4, gives Congress the sole power to impeach a president or a federal officer president, vice president, or other federal officers for wrongdoing, for treason, and for convicted of treason, other crimes, and high crimes and misdemeanors. Okay, so it's a kind of a wide latitude and kind of how that's been interpreted, right? What are misdemeanors? What are high crimes? Do they have to be statutory crimes and so forth, or can it just be behavior? Right, and we've seen in all
statutory versus
right. So statutory means that Congress has passed a law to say that this is a crime. So murder is a crime, right? Okay. But this type of behavior that the president has done, asking for a foreign government to investigate one of his rivals and withholding funds until they actually agree to it and release it, according to text messages between ambassadors. That. Is that actually a high crime? That's behavior, right? But how do we interpret that? All right. So now when Congress impeaches a federal officer or president in this particular case, what they're doing is they're saying that the behavior that this person has basically engaged in is not a warrant of the office that they're holding, and there was some wrongdoing there. So then it goes to the Senate. All right. And the Senate is where they actually hold a trial. So it's probably impeachment, if I could put it in legal terms, is when you go to a grand jury and the grand jury says, okay, evidence is presented and you have a bill, that bill of information, then now there are charges, grand jury indicts.
So right? Basically you're saying there's enough evidence here to take it to trial.
Exactly.
And to take a look at it. So is that what the inquiry is? Because we call it an impeachment inquiry at this point. Is that the grand jury sitting and listening to the evidence?
Well, it's the investigation. It's
Okay.
an investigation. When you actually draft the articles of impeachment, then that's when you have every member of Congress, which is the jury in this case, the grand jury, they would make their
And that's what the
Kind of
president is saying. He won't send any of the documents and so forth until they actually take the vote.
Right, exactly. So if people also talk about when Clinton was going through the impeachment process, a vote was taken first in order to start official impeachment proceedings. Here, no official impeachment proceedings have been started.
Just the inquiry.
Just the
so
inquiry.
Right now we're just doing the investigation.
It's just an investigation.
Okay.
Just like they've been doing with the Mueller report and information coming from there. So I know it's when you put impeachment in front of inquiry, automatically you think it's impeachment, but it's not. It's just an inquiry in order to see if we can impeach it. And I think it was a little misleading for the public. I think it was misleading for the stakeholders in those districts. But I understand why they did it, because you wanted to appease those on the base on the Democratic side that really wanted this, and those representatives were pushing it. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, she's really working a major balancing act here. She hasn't been behind impeachment from the very beginning because of the damage that she thinks it would do to those members of her party that are in vulnerable districts. She may be onto something there, and I think she is. She's appointed Adam Schiff to do the inquiry. So you have 6, I think, committees that are investigating, and I think they're going to share information. Adam Schiff and Elijah Cummings heading up them pretty much in the main 2. But then they're going to consolidate those, and they're going to draft articles of impeachment based upon information they receive from all of those committees.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. What questions do you have in our Impeachment 101 class as we learn about the system and how things are working? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So is there a time limit on the investigation?
No, it's not. Keep in mind,
this could go on for years?
Yeah, keep in mind that the articles of impeachment were not drafted on, they weren't voted on, but they were drafted on Nixon. It took 2 years.
Before they actually voted on?
No, drafted.
Or before they drafted them?
Right. Keep in mind, he resigned before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You said there were 2 other presidents who were under impeachment. I know Bill Clinton.
Right. Bill Clinton.
And who was the other one?
Andrew Johnson. So Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, and Andrew Johnson came right after, of course, Abraham Lincoln. And he was the one that really was against a lot of those. He was over the time of president, over the Congress, and he was against a lot of that legislation to protect. It was Republican-led at that time. Republicans were the ones that actually freed, on the side of Lincoln, and freed slaves, and pushed a lot of legislation through. Now, keep in mind that those individuals went to the other side, and they basically switched sides. The names remain the same, but the supporters switched sides. So he went to trial in the Senate, but he only lost he was found not guilty by 1 vote. All right. So, and he did it because he wanted to remove a Secretary of War at that particular time. And they said, you can't do that. It was a tenure of office act that was up, that he was basing it on. But, the fact that it was basically political strife. Impeachment process is a political process, right? So a lot of times there's strife within the party, strife up in Washington that really doesn't trickle down to America. When I say America, I mean the people on the ground. So we talk about Ukraine. We talk about Crimea. Now, we understand where Ukraine is, what Crimea is, the history of that nation, the strategic importance of it. But, the average American is like, Ukraine, where's Ukraine? If you give them a map without a map of the world, could the average person point out Ukraine? Do they know who the president of Ukraine is? The former president, okay? Same thing that happened during the time of Bill Clinton when we were looking at his impeachment and what he did to, some say, distract from the arguments during the trial of the Senate. But he launched attacks in Yugoslavia, right? I remember Milosevic, and I remember the genocide of that time period in former Yugoslavia, but the average person doesn't, right? So, there's a political risk there that you're going into an area that is very hard to communicate the importance of why this individual is committing a crime or misconduct that rises to the level that it hurts the nation.
If you're just joining us, we're taking a class, Impeachment 101, with legal and political analyst Dr. Eric Claville, director of the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. Let's talk to Maria in Virginia Beach. Hi, Maria. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you so much. I so enjoy your show every Friday.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you actually for this segment. I'm very involved in what's happening now politically, but this very direct breakdown of not only what's happening, but the process is really a touch of brilliance for you guys to put it on the air. And your guest is extremely well-spoken and able to present it in a way that I think is beneficial to all of us. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that, Maria. Are you following this on a day-to-day basis? How is it affecting you in terms of your being here and being a part of this country?
I'm following it every minute. I'm a dual citizen of Greece and the United States, and I adore both countries. And I'm very invested in the U.S. Legal process, but also in our form of government. I think it's exciting. And now that I'm in my 50s, I'm able to appreciate it in a much more deep and different way, because I do feel it affects me very, very deeply, my family and the people around me. But I'm watching what this administration does, and I'm watching what our government has put in place in order to provide checks and balances, protections, and processes that continue to keep our country free and safe.
Okay, great.
It's very, very interesting to me.
Thank you, Maria, for the call. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening, too. We thank you very much for that. So, Eric, let's suppose that Congress votes, that they come up with the articles of impeachment, right, and then it goes to trial in the Senate.
Right.
And suppose the Senate finds him guilty.
Well,
or what do they find?
Okay, well,
do they find you guilty or innocent or what?
Yeah, or you are found guilty or innocent, right? Okay. So going back to before we even get there, right? So there's a process that takes place. And back to the caller, thank you again for your comments. And I'm also, my heart goes out to the nation of Greece, because I know that they were the first ones hit by the downturn of the economy during the mortgage downturn here. So Greece, along with Egypt and the other nations, Tunisia, also Portugal, and also Iceland, and many, many others, what's going on. But thank you again for being a supporter of Another View. But after we get to articles of impeachment, right? Let's just say they were drafted, they're voting on. You only need a simple majority, so 218 votes, which I think on the Democratic side, I think it's going to go by party line. You'll definitely get it. Then it goes to the Senate. The Senate actually has to first adopt rules.
That's
okay.
Right. Yes.
So
forgot about the rules.
So when Mitch McConnell, look, the devil's in the details. Mitch McConnell said, yes, we will have to take it up because the law says we have to. But he said, but how long is another discussion. So how long do they actually are concentrated on this particular trial? With this particular trial, usually the vice president would stand in as the judge. However, in this case, it would be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, because the Vice President would actually stand to gain from the President being removed, because they'll be the next President. So just to keep that balance, and Maria talked about that, our balance here in government. The House would send what they call managers in order to make the case before the Senate. And the Senate itself, the full Senate, they are actually the jury. Okay. You need 2/3 vote of the Senate, which right now they don't have. More than likely they will not have that vote, because of what we'll talk about reasons why I believe my prediction will stand. In addition to that, the president will give individuals lawyers to argue his point also. So we saw this happen during the Clinton administration in our modern time. So we have a good point of reference from 1998. It wasn't too that long ago. So we can go back and take a look at those individuals and the part that they played. It's kind of interesting because you have individuals who were in the Senate at that time, in Congress, who were there when Clinton was being impeached, and they were really on board with impeaching Clinton. Those same individuals now are still in Congress, and they're defending the president. One is Lindsey Graham. So it's very interesting to see the change, So
let me ask you this. Are there Republicans in the background who are not coming forward publicly to say that they are in favor of this process, but maybe going, maybe we really do need to take a closer look at what the president is doing?
There's a saying, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line, right? So whatever the charge is from the party leader, they're going to walk that line. When you get out of that line, get ready for the repercussions. Just like the congressman that said we're going to go through the process. Immediately started getting phone calls. What are you talking about? That's not what we discussed. We got to toe this line. Behind the scenes, all right, I mean, and I've had individuals talk with me about this. I mean, every time the president opens his mouth, they're nervous because they don't know what he's going to say. I mean, whether he supports the president or not, I mean, he's very erratic. He's not the type of person that reads policy reports. He watches a lot of Fox News. He reads a lot of the conspiracy theories out there, and he runs with that, right? So when you run government, that's really not a proper way to run government. It's just not, no matter who you are. So they're very, 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 very nervous from that standpoint. There are a lot that would prefer him not be there, okay? But the president right now serves as politically a great distraction because behind the scenes, the policies that they wanted to pass, they're getting more done in these last 2 years than they've been able to do over the last 20 years. There have been a total of 150 federal judges that have been appointed, conservative judges, and a lot of them far-right judges appointed to the federal court. 2 Supreme Court justices, I want to say 11 circuit court judges, and then the rest district court judges, which is where most cases go to die, right?
And those are the things that people should really be paying attention to because that's what affects your life on a day-to-day basis.
Day-to-day basis, a lot of, and again, the level of proof that you need to prove your claim, and we're talking civil rights claims and others that are non-pro-business, are so high now that the average person don't have the money to do it. And they're not going to be able to prove those things. All right, we're talking about employment discrimination. The level of evidence and the burden that you bear in order to prove discrimination now is so high that it's a very, very long process, and a lot of people really can't afford to go through that process anymore. So they just kind of go to another job, or they just kind of endure.
Okay, so back to our hypothetical. So he gets impeached. So what?
Right. So.
What does that mean?
So, number one, he goes down in history as only the 3rd president to be impeached, right? So that's history within itself. I don't think a lot of people right now care about history, so I don't think that's a major deal. Politically, I think that it emboldens his side, especially the base, tremendously. We see the comments out there from the Southern Baptist pastor, Jeffries, that mentioned 13,000 plus congregation. If the president impeached, this is going to be a civil war like fracture. And we talk about the Civil War all the time, right? And the Civil War in this country was devastating. All right. And that's a major statement to make. And without understanding the impact of that statement, I think is very, very, very dangerous. We have the police chief in New Jersey that said that Trump is the last hope for white people. And this is a person who is over a law enforcement agency. So he leads and directs that agency and hires people and promotes people that really are in line with his philosophy. You have Dylan Roof, who killed the people in the church in South Carolina, which I think still doesn't get enough airplay to show how dangerous things are. He started to talk about a lot of these issues that is spewed on the far right, that blacks are taking over the country. They're taking and raping all our women and things of that nature, that we got to protect our country. You have the mass shooter in El Paso who also said black and brown people are Hispanics taking over. There's an invasion. We got to protect our country. You have individuals, the other white male that dressed in military gear and they walked into Walmart in Missouri to intimidate people. And you have to think about the mindset of individuals, okay? First of all, he felt comfortable enough that he could walk around in military gear strapped and nothing was going to happen to him. And nothing did happen to him because, we can't do anything for him. But we talk about the black male who was protecting people on military trail here in Norfolk, and the police thought it was him shooting and they shot him. Mm-hmm. But again, these are some very, very dangerous beliefs that unfortunately a segment of America, and it's more specifically white America, have been miseducated on. And they've taken these beliefs, they internalize them, and they really are afraid really for nothing because the things that they're saying and the things that they're believing, there's no evidence to prove them. But you can't. But again,
but when somebody believes something deep within their heart, that's their belief.
Look, belief is power.
Yeah.
Belief is power. People will put their lives on the line because of a belief. So it's very important that we make sure that we talk about these issues fairly. We talk about them with history. We talk about them with facts and statistics, and we talk about them where we give everybody a voice and a chance to make their mistakes, but to come to an understanding of what the truth is.
So a lot of people believe that if you are impeached, then you are kicked out of office. That is not the case.
It's not the case. The Congress, the Senate has to hold the trial. As I stated, the Chief Justice would be the judge, the Senate would be the jury, the managers from the House of Representatives will be the individuals prosecuting the impeachment charges. The president will give lawyers to argue his side. The Senate will vote. 2/3 of the Senate must. 67 individuals must vote. Right now, there's a 54, 40, hardline 51, but I think it's 54, 46 split in the Senate. And people talk about cracks because some senators have said one come in or this come in. There are no cracks there. Okay, that is a hard line. They're going to
toe that line. It really will come down to party in terms of the vote.
Oh, hands down. You may get one or two, maybe Senator Romney, who's been at odds with the president, they may vote but it's not going to be anything major. And a lot of people are still afraid.
So again, besides history, is there a punishment? Is there a consequence to the president because of this?
No, it's kind of like a mistrial or a not guilty. You just kind of go back and go back home. And so he'll go back to the White House. As a matter of fact, he'll never leave it during the time period. He'll still be there, right? So we just kind of go back to square one.
Then what's the point?
When you talk to constitutional purists, when there was misdeeds and misgivings, you have to go through a process in order to correct it. If you go to that individual or that agency and listen, there are some problems here, just like you get the Inspector General report and say, let's clean it up. If you don't do it and you do it over and over and over and over again, then you have to go through the process, right? You get some that look at it from a political standpoint. Speaker Pelosi, we can't do it because it's going to be a bad, it's going to give, we're afraid it's going to backlash against us. So everybody's playing this game, right? And who is going to hurt the worst? But the adage is, and there's a belief, and I also believe you always have to do the right thing. The question is, when do you do the right thing?
Let's talk to Anita in Chesapeake. Hi, Anita. You're on the air.
Thanks for taking my call. I've made this prediction before, and I knew that it sounds crazy, but it's not. It's clear to me now. The vice president is going to be the sacrificial lamb in all of this because it's going to come to the fact that he was the one that leaned in on the president of Ukraine, him and Giuliani. But Giuliani is a private citizen. So they'll never impeach Trump. The Senate will never impeach him, but they will impeach the vice president. and Nikki Haley is going to be the vice president, and Trump is going to have another 4 years.
All right, let me let Eric respond. Thanks, Anita, for the call.
Well, anything's possible, but I'm not sure if the Congress is looking at drafting articles against the vice president. This is simply the president. I don't think the vice president is going to take one for the president on this one. I just don't see that happening. I've never seen anybody want to go to jail for someone else.
Okay, so your prediction.
Yes.
That President Trump would be reelected.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Reelected.
And your prediction was that you thought on the Democratic side it would be that Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, and you would suggest to the Democratic Party that put them together,
right?
So that you can get a stronger vote. You still stick to that?
I do. And remember, I said that I think Joe Biden wouldn't last, and Elizabeth Warren would end up being the nominee.
Right.
And it looks like, I think a day after that, we started seeing the polls turn. I think Joe Biden is being hurt in this. He's been hurt the most. The reason being because it does raise, even though there's nothing illegal about his son being on that board, it was nothing wrong. It's just the optics. His father was vice president.
I was going to say, explain it. Explain that situation very briefly.
Sure. Very briefly, during the time that Joe Biden was vice president under President Obama, there was a prosecutor in Ukraine that was not prosecuting individuals for the war crimes that they committed during that time period. The entire world was against this particular person and wanted them removed. Once that person was removed by the president, then they would release $1 billion in aid to Ukraine, which did happen. Then there was an oil company in which his son served on the board for and received $50,000 a month. Now, his son had no expertise in oil exploration or anything like that, never worked in the oil company or what the case may be. There are a lot of people that serve on boards that have no expertise for what that company does. I can
attest to that.
What they do, they serve on boards for because there's some access there that person gives, or they serve some purpose. You have the son of the vice president of the most powerful country in the world simply doesn't hurt. So for access. Now, again, the optics, they're going to run with that. And I don't think right now the DNC really wants that critique of their top candidate going into the fall. So I think he's going to be hurt the most. And I do think, and I still hold to it, Elizabeth Warren will rise to be the nominee. I don't think that's the winning formula. I still stand by Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren being the winning formula.
How will this whole impeachment scenario affect the Democratic primary?
I think the Democratic primary itself is going to wind down very soon. You have a lot of candidates, still 18 out there, Barbara, that are kind of fledgling. A lot of them are fledgling. If you're not in the top 5, top 6, you're fledgling. Marianne Williamson, is still in the top 6 of some polls, which is absolutely amazing. Andrew Yang, and as they call it, the Yang Gang, because he's a millennial, he's out there and he's putting good ideas out there. He and Mayor Pete are raising more money than anybody, right? Which is amazing. So you have 3 non-politicians that are really out there doing more, which kind of shows you how just the imbalance of the message and the party is and also their base. But I think this is going to dwindle down to maybe 10 before Christmas, and then you'll get the top 6 to top 5 closer to the top after the first caucus and primary. And then from there, you will see what happens with the top 3 juggernauts, of course, Biden, Sanders, and Warren. We'll see what happens with Harris, with Booker, Mayor Pete. Yang is going to be in it because he's got the money. And then that's it. I don't think Amy Klobuchar is going to make it because she's not resonating. The more and more we talk about impeachment, the more and more we talk about this president, and the more and more he talks about it, we become desensitized to it. And not only that, but there's no reason to talk about these other candidates. I mean, they're not making any strides. So I think there is something to being in the top 3 because you're a fixture. I think everybody else is really fighting for a political appointment.
So what does the DNC do with this?
Honestly, I don't know. I've been at a loss with the DNC and their strategy for a while. After Clinton, who's the rock star and, again, absolute political genius, the DNC has kind of been fledgling a lot. As far as direction and what they're trying to do. They've kind of changed the way they're allocating their resources for votes. They're not focusing on their base, which are African Americans, the largest base of the Democratic Party, that have been ignored for decades, especially during the last 20 years. So there is no black agenda out there for African American neighborhoods, for African American families. There is no agenda really for college students who are still saying, even on the Obama administration, and of course we hear the lawsuit that's out there about teachers and just this paperwork. 99% of their loan forgiveness is not being accepted. So there's a real issue about who is your base. What is your message? Who are your voters? Because a lot of times you're taking these Twitter and Facebook issues, but those people disappear after the protest in March and they don't vote.
Well, and I was going to say, so the Republican Party isn't necessarily reaching out to that base either. I mean, they're not necessarily reaching out to African Americans or students or so forth. So does that just mean that those groups, and I'm generalizing here, just won't vote?
Well, no, I think they'll vote. I think a lot of them won't vote at the highest levels that they need, and that's part of my 5 top reasons why I believe my prediction will come about.
Bring it.
But to your point, the Republicans don't need those individuals to vote. Especially in this election. Now, moving forward in 2024, 2028, there's going to have to become a realigning of both parties. Who are your voters? Who's the future? Who are you going after? But the question was initially with my prediction, do I stick with it?
Do you stick with it? Mm-hmm.
That answer is yes. I stick with everything that I stated 2 weeks ago. Nothing has changed, even after the impeachment inquiry and so forth. And here's the reason why. Top 5 reasons why I believe that Trump will still be reelected. And I don't know if he'll serve 4 years after, but will be reelected. Number one, the first 2 deal with the Democratic Party. The last 3 deal with the Republican. The first 2, there's a lack of a strong candidate from the Democrats and a lack of a message to the base. I just discussed that and gave my reasoning for it. There also, number 2, there's a lack of ability to communicate the impeachment reasoning to the public effectively. We discussed it earlier in the show where I talked about where you're going to have to find that reasoning. Why not after Mueller report then and why now after this 9-page report? Not saying it's not the right thing to do, but you got to be able to communicate that effectively. Why is Ukraine important? Where is Ukraine? And so forth. So you have to be able to communicate.
Got to make that connection to the people.
You have to. You got to make it real simple. Now, so those are the 2 major issues for us Democrats. The next 3 are because of Republicans. Number 1, as far as Republicans go, Trump will win re-election because it's not about winning the popular vote. It's about winning the electoral vote. So we're talking about gerrymandering and Republican tribalism. With gerrymandered districts, right now there are very strong districts in that we have 2 U.S. senators that are on the Republican side, that those states are going to go red no matter what. Because of Republican tribalism, when you get into that booth, I don't care who the Republican is. I mean,
you're going to vote Republican.
You're going to vote for him. I mean, think about it. Roy Moore lost by a few thousand votes, not that much. So you're going to vote for that particular person. Also, number 2, the evangelical push. There is a strong alignment of evangelicals, a lot of them, of their support of Trump and their alignment with God. They attach the 2, and there is no pulling them apart. If you're not on Trump's side, then you're not on God's side. Israel, even they've named a neighborhood after Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that he's been the best president for Israel. So they're playing into that message and this divine intervention that God can use anybody. We know he says a lot of things that are nasty, that are not right, but God can use anybody. And if Trump is someone even made the statement about him and the second coming of Jesus Christ, which I think is, well, that's for another show. But the gerrymandering Republican tribalism, the evangelical push, and then finally, white nationalism and racism. This goes back to the point I made with the police chief saying that he's the last hope for white people. I don't care if you are Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat. I don't care if you're conservative, you're liberal, or you're independent. There has not been one policy that this White House has championed that goes against the status of white Americans in America.
So nothing has changed in terms of policy.
Think about it. He's saying we want the country less brown, less black. Okay. He's saying that we want to bring manufacturing back. We want time period. He talks when it was really before civil rights, when there were strong states' rights. He talks about very nasty comments about countries that are black and brown, and talks very, very well about countries that are European nature. We want more people from Sweden over here and things of that nature. You know, the white nationalism is a major issue. We know it here in Virginia very well. We saw what happened with the Unite the Right march in Charlottesville. It is real. It is real. And then finally, you talk about racism. White nationalism is tied into racism because it's a belief that this is a white country. And they're not too far from the truth when you look at policies and laws that were created since the founding of our country that benefits white America and not others.
You know, it is disheartening to think that there are more people that think that way than there are of people who are much more accepting.
Well,
but it may not be that way. I mean, I just think my question is, are they just more coalesced? Are they just stronger because they've just come together and stick together?
Now, again, my statement that I made, not saying that those individuals support Trump's agenda policy. He just hasn't created policy that's against the status of white America. And those individuals I don't think are more. I think they're louder. And those individuals that are willing to go out on the limb for their beliefs. But as the caller stated, Maria, we do have checks and balances in this country. That's one of the great things about our Constitution. But the key to it is to get involved on the ground level. You, as one person, one vote, have the opportunity to change the course of history and time. And America, that's what our country is about.
Dr. Eric Claville, Impeachment 101. What a great class today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, 58% of Americans don't think Trump should be impeached, according to the latest CNN poll that just came out. Before we go today, a couple of announcements. Just found this out. Singer and actress and model Diane Carroll, I remember her, has passed away at the age of 84. Wonderful. Her films include Carmen Jones, Porgy and Bess, and of course, the movie Claudine. And so she was an awesome actress. She was one of the first African-American actresses to be out in the front.
Falcon Crest.
And also, the great singer, opera singer Jesse Norman passed away this week. Oh, and on our programming note, on our sister station, WHRO FM 90.3, if you tune in Saturday at 6 p.m. or Sunday at 1 for Performance Today, they're doing a tribute to Jesse Norman. And I also want to invite you to attend a celebration luncheon in honor of our military, sponsored by the Hampton Roads Diversity and Inclusion Consortium on Tuesday, October 29th from 11 to 2 at the Norfolk Waterside Marriott. The theme is Ranking High with Diversity and Inclusion, and will feature Rear Admiral Dean Vanderlee, Commander Naval Facilities Atlantic, and J.D. Myers, Army veteran and Senior Vice President and Regional Manager of Cox Communications. I'll be your MC. Tickets are available. Visit servingourown.eventbrite.com. I'm off next week for a much needed vacation, so producer Lisa Godley will be here with you and the Another View Roundtable. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer, and Todd Washburn is our audio engineer. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Make it a fantastic weekend, everyone, and thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.